Okay.
Okay, now.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. Yeah. So one thing you must understand there for your CIT exam, very crucial for your CIT exam is, you see, when you look at the DTEs, I get to it. Before you can enjoy any benefit in a DTA, you must be a resident of either of the treaty states. That means residence is a very key provision for you to understand DTAs. Does it make sense? So residence is dealt with under Article 4 of the DTAs, and it plays a significant role in determining the scope, that is the coverage of the application of the DTAs, and helps in avoiding juridical double taxation in many situations, because you need to be a resident of either state to actually enjoy these benefits. You get it? So let's say if you are, when we look at the Ghana-UK treaty, if you are a resident of Ghana and you are not a resident of UK, you can still enjoy you are a Ghanaian, so you enjoy the treaty benefits, right? If you're a resident of UK, the same. Or if you're a resident of both states, you can still enjoy it, right? So that is one thing you must understand. That residence is very important. Are we okay? So when it comes to resident, you have to demonstrate that you're a resident of one or both of the contracting states to be able to gain access to a tax treaty to avail the benefits under it. Remember the last time when I was talking about enjoying the benefits in a tax treaty, I said you must be resident in both states. Do you remember? Or either of them? Is that okay? Is that okay? Now, Article 4 of the OECD and the UN model define the term resident. I get it, of a contracting state. One thing you must understand is that this is an exhaustive definition. It means it ends, like it completes the definition of residence. It means there's nothing more to be added again. It has the complete definition, meaning it's exhaustive. It exhausts the whole definition of residence, right? That determines the applicability or non-applicability of the tax treaty to a person. Is that okay? So what is the purpose of the article? Can you hear me? You see the network, the light almost went off again.
We can hear you, but the screen is
Yes,
off.
I hear you.
My lights almost went off again. I don't know what they are doing. Sabe phone so mo can share any vampire. So why sorry, why residents? We need this article to be able to define a resident of a contracting state to apply the provisions like persons covered, right? Under Article 1. Are we okay? Now, you remember that I told you that you should be able to be a resident of either of the states or both of the states, right? To enjoy benefits in a treaty. And that is what persons covered talks about, right? Article 1. Now, to provide a solution to cases where somebody is a dual resident, right? If you're a dual resident, you have to apply the tiebreaker rule. Remember, okay? Now, there are three most important paragraphs when it comes to residence, okay? Well, paragraph 1 talks about the definition of resident. Paragraph 2 talks about tiebreaker rule for individuals and tiebreaker rule for other persons. Are we okay? So please write those three things down. I will tell you how to diagnose it. Have you written it? When you are done, you tell me. Just write those three articles. If you are done, you tell me.
So we are done. Good.
So this is it. If you want to pass the exam, just master these three parts. Are we okay? So first of all, if it will come in the exam, it's either you like they will ask you from the perspective of enjoying benefits under a treaty. You get it? Or they are going to bring a situation where the person is dual resident as an individual. Are you getting it? Or are you getting it? Where it is a company who is dual resident. Do you get it? Have this at the back of your mind. When you have this at the back of your mind, it will make everything easy for you, right? When you are dealing with residents. So let's look at the definition of residence. Article 4, paragraph 1 defines residence under a tax treaty. The term resident of a contracting state means a person who is one, liable to tax in a contracting state. So you must be liable to tax under the domestic laws of a particular contracting state. So if you're a resident under the Income Tax Act, then under the DTA, you are considered resident. Does that make sense? So it says what? A person, when we say person, we are talking about what? Both individuals and entities. So a person who is one, liable to tax in a contracting state, two, under its domestic law, because of one, his domicile, where you stay, residence, place of management, or any other criteria which is similar to these four. You get it? So to qualify as a treaty resident, all four conditions must be satisfied. Are we okay? The article also mentions that the government of each state, its political subdivisions, and local authorities are residents of that state. Are we okay? So are we okay? So the MMDAs, the MDAs, the ministries, departments, agencies, all of them are considered residents under Article 4. Is that okay? Please, do you all get it? Can we move to the next level?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what if this time you get a case and they said that there's been an issue of contention between a department, maybe the Department of Works and Housing, and maybe another state, I get another state residence. So where the Department of Works and Housing, where are we going to place it? Would it be a resident of Ghana or not a resident of Ghana?
So the question again.
I said the Department of Works and Housing has an international tax issue. Are you getting it? With another country. Where will we classify this Department of Works and Housing?
Say Article 5.
Article 5. No, I'm asking, so will we consider the department as a resident of Ghana?
Oh, okay.
Would we? Yes or no?
Yes.
Why? Then you support it with evidence.
Because the place of management is in Ghana.
Okay, it could be. Yes, you can use that, but we read something right now. Okay, this is what you used to have to answer the question. Do you get it?
It's a government institution.
Okay.
Do you get it? So what answer will you provide now? I want a good answer now. Oh, you haven't even given me the answer. I want you to use this to answer it now because I've given you the clue.
So the statement says to qualify as a treaty resident. All four conditions.
But I meant the example that I gave with the Department of Works and Housing having an issue with another state. Are we going to say it's their residents? If yes, what are you supporting it with? That is where you are going to say in accordance with Article 4, the government of each state, its political subdivisions and local authorities are all considered residents of that state. Do you get it? This is what I was looking for. You see, you have to be able to use. Do you get what I'm trying to say? For now, I'm not only concerned about the knowledge, but your ability to apply. Do you get it now? Are we okay? So let's look at the exclusion for residents. Who would not be a resident? In simple terms, if you're not resident, then you are not resident. You get it? So remember I told you earlier that this code. Sorry. So we are saying that, like, if you only make income from sources within a state, right? Only sources within a state and not, what do we call it? Like not worldwide, then definitely you are not resident, because residents are taxed on worldwide income. Do you remember this?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So we are saying that if you are only subject to tax on income that has a source in a particular country, then you are obviously non-resident. So you will not include you in the definition of resident. I get it. So residence is applied to persons and not the income. I get it. So a person must be liable to tax under the domestic laws because of his tax status under one of the criteria above. Are we okay? So when we say subject to tax, we said that you must be subject or liable to tax under the domestic law. So to be liable to tax, you have to be subject to the tax laws of a particular contracting state. I get it. So you must remember that in most states, some people are liable to tax even though they are exempt from tax, right? If they meet some requirements under the law. So in Ghana, things like pension funds, charities, and other organizations, right? These kind of entities, what happens? They are exempt, right? Though you run those entities, when you apply to the GRA, they can exempt you, okay? So in some states, they are not considered liable to tax like Ghana. This means it is free to address in negotiations between the two treaty partners when they are dealing with issues of what? Residents. Please, is everyone following? Does it make sense?
Yes.
So we are saying that if you are liable to tax under Ghanaian tax law and you are dealing with UK, that means you are a resident of Ghana because you are subject to tax under the laws of Ghana. So let's look at the tax on worldwide income. Most often residents should be liable to tax on their worldwide income, which is their full tax liability. So due to a locally related attachment to that state as a resident under its domestic law, the tax residence must be based on domicile residence, place of management, or any other criteria of similar nature. And this similar nature suggests that that criteria should resemble domicile, even if it's not domicile, but it resembles domicile, residence, or a place of management. Then we say that, yes, this person must be resident in that country. So this exhausts the definition of residence. I even went into the commentary and brought out the key details, right? Which is important. Now, if we should go to the next paragraph, which is what your examiner will mostly be examining you on. Do you get it? Any questions? So the dual residents, mostly at the exam, the one for companies are not that difficult. But when it comes for individuals, I think a lot of people cannot wrap their head around. So we are going to dive deeper into that kind of question, right? So this paragraph relates to a case where under the provisions of paragraph 1, an individual is a resident of both contracting states. So a tiebreaker rule is provided to determine a single state of residence for an individual. Where an individual or entity is a resident of both contracting states, then that individual will be treated as resident for tax purposes for either contracting states by applying the tiebreaker rule. Okay, so anytime you are dual resident, like both countries cannot determine where you are resident, we try to, use the the tiebreaker rule to deal with it. Now, one thing you must understand, I'm trying to actually, this code is worrying me. Now, one thing you must understand is that now CIT will blend this with our domestic law. So if you are solving a question, it will be difficult for you to trace these things. Why am I saying this? So they'll give you a question where the person has come to Ghana, he has come to work, are you getting it, for some number of days, and he's a UK citizen. You get the idea. Then you have to fish in to see whether he had a permanent home, he had all these things, right? And then maybe it's an unemployment and they gave him some accommodation, or it's a business, he has accommodation in Ghana, he has some family in Ghana, he also has family in the UK. Are you getting it? Are we okay? So
Yes.
if you see some questions like that, you need to open your eyes. We are going to look at a similar one just after this. So if an individual is a resident of two states, then his resident status shall be determined as follows, right? 1, he shall be deemed to be resident only in the states in which he has a permanent home. Okay, so where do you have your permanent home? That's what we have to look at first. If we cannot determine where you have your permanent home, then we look at where your personal and economic relations are closer. We call that the center of vital interest. Okay? Is that okay? So where do you have your visa status, your friends, your family, all that? Now, if his center of vital interest cannot be determined and you also have no permanent home, then we look at the states where you have your habitual abode. Is that okay? So what is habitual abode? We are going to look at all those things. If you have a habitual abode in both states or none of the states, then we look at where you are a national. If you're a national of both states or neither, then the competent authorities now settle the issue by mutual agreement under Article 25. Now, let's dive deeper. When we say permanent home, what does it mean? This is the first test on where the individual has a permanent home. Now, the permanent home would mean a dwelling place that is available to you at what? What's the word there? That's the word I want you to write down. Permanent home, then you use that keyword. Available to him at what? All times, continuously. That's what you have to write down, because this is what you use to answer exam questions. So when you get a question, you are going to ask the person whether what is the particular residence that is available to him, or that dwelling, that place, is it available to him at all times, continuously? Do you get it? That's the keyword. I picked it right from the commentary, and not occasionally. So we are looking at something that you do most often, right? It is your place, right? And it includes a place that we take on rent also for a prolonged period of time. When you say period, you don't have to add of time. Ghana, bro, for period. Period signifies time, right? For a prolonged period. So that is it. Have you written it down? I'm only highlighting keywords for you. That's what you use to answer questions. Are we okay? Have you written it down? When I tell you to highlight keywords or write down keywords, just write them down, because that's what we'll use. And I want you, when I give you a question, just feel free, express yourself. See, let me tell you the gospel truth about international tax, or tax audit. If you want to become very good at it, in class, when they ask questions, answer. Even if it's wrong, don't worry. That's why I'm there to correct you. The more you engage yourself, you get used to scenarios. It means you are building hand-to-eye coordination, okay? It means you're actually building hand-to-eye coordination. So whatever you have written down, you just try to see if you can work it through the scenario. That's how we learn, right? I'm there for you to help you out, but that is exactly how you learn. Is that okay? Have you written it? Can we move? Have you written it? Can we move?
Yes, we can move on.
Okay, so that is it. So we've seen permanent home. Now, any place taken for a short duration or stay or temporary use may be for reasons such as a business travel, educational purpose, or short holiday, should not be regarded as a permanent home. See, I've given you the clue. So if you look in a question and you see somebody who has taken a place for a short stay or temporary use, or maybe some hotel just for business travel or educational purpose or short holiday, it should never be regarded as a permanent home. Makes sense? Does that make sense? The word there was what? Available to you at all times continuously. We saw the word what? I highlighted prolonged period. So if it is a short duration of stay, then we shouldn't consider it as what?
Permanent resident.
Are you getting? As permanent. So then if we cannot determine where you have your permanent home, or you have permanent home in both states, then we have to check the next one, which is being able to determine your center of vital interest. Okay, so if the above test, which is your permanent home, is inconclusive, okay, this inconclusiveness will help you answer questions. So when you are answering and you realize that I cannot get further evidence for this, then you say that test is inconclusive. Then you start the next test. So this is how you actually answer questions. So if the above test proves inconclusive for the reason that the individual has a permanent home available to him in both states, he will be considered a resident of the contracting state where his personal and economic relations are closer. Do you get it? So that is what we call the center of vital interest. Now, your center of vital interest refers to the states where your personal and economic relations are closer. Thus, we give preference to your family and social relations, your visa status, your occupation, your place of business, a place where you administer your properties, political affiliations, cultural and other social activities of the individual. Are we okay? So that is it. So anytime you are answering questions, open your eyes to these things, right? 4PPPC, right? So all these things, look at them. Does that make sense? So what I want you to write is where economic and personal relations are closer, right? If you like, you can write family, social relationships, businesses, properties, political affiliations, and whatnot. Now, another one which could be a little confusing is habitual abode. Now, in the case where you have a permanent home available to you in both states, and it is not possible to determine in which one you have your center of vital interest, or in the case where you have a permanent home available to you in neither state, then we will give preference to the contracting state where you have your habitual abode. Okay? Habitual abode. Abode means stay. So where do you stay often? The word there is what? Often. Where do you stay often? That's what we call what? Habitual abode. I hope it's starting to make sense. So habitual abode, what is it? It refers to the frequency. How frequent do you stay there? The duration, how long? The regularity of stays that are part of a settled routine in an individual's life. So the word there is what? Part of what? A settled routine in an individual's life. You get it? Part of what? A settled routine in an individual's life. This is the statement I want you to put down. You see, I'm not making you write all, but I'm making you write the keywords which you are going to use to what? Answer questions. And therefore, more than that, will last for a short time. You see, we are not talking about short durations here. Anything which is for a short time is still subjective, right? Define what means short time. It's up to you to decide whether this is short compared to the normal stays or the normal this thing that is done, right? So in this case, all stays made in a state must be considered without it being necessary to ascertain the reasons for them. Yes, so we are saying that so far as you go in the state and stay, we are not concerned about what you came to do there. But so far as you stay there often, frequency, duration, and regularity of stays, please highlight that one to write it down. Frequency, duration, and regularity of stays. that are part of a settled routine in the individual's life, right? So these are the key words when we talk about habitual abode. So when you're answering questions, you can first, I told you, when you want to answer questions and get the best of them in whatever course you are doing, so far as it has case studies, use P, right? Use P. So when we talk about P, you are talking about what? What is the point you want to make, which is the heading? Maybe you want to talk about habitual abode, right? You want to talk about habitual abode. The next thing is, what is the explanation of that point, right? So you take the explanation, that means what is habitual abode? Not so. Then finally, what is the evidence from the case? So you give evidence, that is the application applied to case. You see, this is how, when you answer questions, the examiner has no option, has no choice than to give you the full mark. So look at a simple illustration. I'm going to say that, okay, from the scenario, or we start and said, from the scenario, it seems Bakumi is deemed to be a dual residence. No, so in accordance with Article 4, dual residence will happen when a person, or here let me use an individual is considered to be resident in both contracting states, or we cannot determine its resident for both contracting states, right? If that happens, we use the tiebreaker rule to determine his residence. And the step is as follows, right? So we start and say what? He shall be deemed resident at the place where he has his permanent home. Then I start permanent home. What is permanent home, right? Then I say permanent home, then I define permanent home, right? You get it? A place which is available to him at all times continuously and mostly for a prolonged period, not so, and does not include a place which is for a short duration. From the case, you see I applied P. I took what the point, which was permanent home, underlined it nicely, explained what it was, and now gave evidence from the case. And then I'll go for it to say, from the case, it seems he has a permanent home in both contracting states, and therefore the test remains inconclusive for permanent home. Then I end there. Then I go to the next test. You get it? So anytime it's inconclusive, you go to the next one. Anytime it's inconclusive, you go to the next one until you get to where the person, it was obvious in the case. So let's say at long last, we got to the place where he was what? A national. So as he was a national, we say, okay, therefore he's a national of maybe UK. But for me, I'll say that if the above test proved to be inconclusive, then the tax authorities will still have settled by mutual agreement. So for me, when I'm answering questions, if it's 20, I'm going for 20 flags. I don't look for 15, neither do I look for 18. If it's 20, I'm fighting for 20. That's my style. So my students, when they answer questions in the exam, sometimes they should even use their papers to make marking schemes, because I teach you exactly what you need. But people do not listen. They combine so many information from various sources, and at the end of the day, they get confused. I hope you got the approach. Was the approach clear?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So you have to write it down. P. Anytime you have any case studies, it could be tax audit, it could be oil and gas. So far as it's a case, take your point, explain, give evidence. It works magic everywhere. It works magic everywhere. Any case, not only tax, ICA, marketing, everywhere. It works. It works. Shall we proceed? Okay, so in this case, note, all states made in a state must be considered without it being necessary to ascertain the reasons for them. I told you. So just look at when he moves to the state. Now, if the individual has an habitual abode in both states or neither of them, he shall be treated as a resident of the contracting state, which he is a national. That means what? A contracting state where he's a citizen. You get it? Most of the time, nationality and citizenship are alike. So if we cannot determine this, then the competent authorities or the tax authorities of the respective contracting states will what? Settle this under mutual agreement. The taxpayer will submit his case, and the tax authority, if the tax authority in Ghana can settle it, then fine. If the tax authority in Ghana cannot settle, then the two tax authorities will sit and within 3 years of submitting the case, they have to talk about it. If they cannot settle, then they go with arbitration. They bring an arbitrator in to settle the issue. So that's how far mutual agreement goes. When we get there, you will like it. Okay, so let's see how you guys can answer this. Selom is a very successful football player who lives with his family in Belgium, right? Selom's children attend a school in Belgium, although Selom has lived in Belgium for the past 10 years, and this year inclusive. He grew in and is a national of Ghana. Selom owns several houses, both in Ghana and Belgium. Selom and his family live in one of the houses in Belgium, right? And when Selom is traveling for his football engagement and other activities, he either stays at hotels or when in Ghana, he stays at one of his houses in Ghana. Selom has an arrangement with his brother that Selom will retain legal ownership of the houses in Ghana, but that his brother will have the right to stay in one of the houses, which is the house Selom normally stays in when he's in Ghana throughout the year, provided that Selom has a room available to him at all times. You see, available to him at all times within the house in Ghana. In addition, Selom will keep his belongings in the house in Ghana. Selom rents out all the other houses in Ghana and Belgium via an estate agency in Ghana, place of what? Administration of his properties. We read this, right? Is it starting to make sense? Now, Selom spends his time training and competing in football tournaments in Belgium and some other countries, including Ghana. Selom derives income from a variety of sources, including prize money and sponsorship deals from football activities. Most recently, Selom has been offered a sponsorship deal with a major sports brand totaling $900,000 for 36 months from Belgium, that anytime he played in Belgium, he will be entitled to his sponsorship money in Belgium. Note, there's a DTA between Ghana and Belgium. Advice on the resident status of Selom. Yes, my people. So this is where we express ourselves. Let's start. There's an issue of dual residence here, right? 2 countries, Belgium, Ghana. Okay, so we use the tiebreaker rule. I've done that side for you. What's the first test? What is the first test? To determine its residence. What's the first test?
Permanent home.
So, yes, what do we say? Where do we think Selom has a permanent home?
In Belgium. I think
No, I said, where do you think he has a permanent home? You have to give me evidence now. If you just say in Belgium, you haven't answered the question. I taught you so much about permanent home. So tell me, I told you P. Try to use P.
okay. Okay.
You take 1 point. You use.
So it's inconclusive.
No, don't just give me inconclusive. Use P and tell me, follow. Permanent home, that's the point. Explanation. So you tell me, Bill, permanent home means this. Then you say from the case, you get it. I'm teaching you how to answer questions. So it's good you came like that. So I'm now teaching you. So take it point by point and let's see. So permanent home. Yes, what are you going to say? What is permanent home? So tell us. You start from there. You wrote it. Just look at the summary you wrote. That's what I want.
So you say it's a place that is available to him at all times continuously. And if it's rented, it should be for a prolonged period.
Nice. So once you've said this, then from the case, let's see. Are you getting it? From the case, then you try and look at it from the perspective of Belgium. First, does Selom have a permanent home in Belgium? Yes or no? I want you to answer it yourself. Yes or no? Yes, the rest.
Yes.
Yes, because they said
Because
he lives
has
with his
lived there for
family
10 years.
and lived there for 10 years. This
Yes.
proves what? The place has been available to him at all times and continuously, right? For a prolonged period, right? This has been met. Do you get the idea? Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have looked at it from the perspective of Belgium. Now let's come to Ghana. A place available to him at all times. They said what? His family live in one of the houses in the Belgium and is traveling for football engagement. He stays at hotels, or when in Ghana, he stays at one of his houses in Ghana. And he has an arrangement with his brother that he will retain legal ownership of the houses in Ghana, but his brother will have the right to stay in one of the houses, the house that he normally stays in when he's in Ghana throughout the year. So throughout the year, is it not a prolonged period?
Yeah.
Now, that is not all. And they said, provided that Selom has a room available to him at all times throughout the year, continuously. You see the way the examiner crafts this. So the same things I taught you, he has crafted it into something else. So this also proves that he also has what? A permanent home where?
Ghana.
In Ghana. So you have a permanent home in Ghana. You also have a permanent home in what? In Belgium. So what does that mean? It means that this test is what? Inconclusive. Do you all get it?
So even at a certain point, he says it's a national of Ghana.
Yes, but
Salom
you
is a
take it one
national of
step
Ghana.
at a time. You have to follow all the steps.
Okay.
You get it?
Okay.
Don't just jump to national and say
It's
it's international.
inconclusive.
You have to follow each of the steps. For me, I always follow through to the end. Do it like that,
Okay.
and trust me, you get your full mark. Because that question is actually coming anyway. It's your question 2. And it's 20 marks. I'm telling you the truth. It's coming live. But the only thing is that they'll just bring some business income, some employment income, small one. But it's the same question that they framed. They've reframed. That is it. It's the same thing. I hope you have said, after some few weeks, I know people forgot, they'll forget I said this. So that's what I'm telling you. Okay, so now I hope you are learning something. So I believe in making this practical for you. So let's practicalize it, right? So let's get a blank workbook and let's see how it goes. So I actually focus on teaching you how to answer questions, because I realize that a lot of students have the knowledge, right? But when it comes to how they put their ideas together, it is a problem. So this is what I would do. I get in it. It says advice on the residents of Selom. I can say what? Residents of Selom, right? Then I underline it what? Nicely. Then I'll say what? Per the case, not so, or in accordance with what? In accordance with Article 4, not so, of the Belgium Ghana DTA, not so. Selom seems to be what? Seems to be dual resident or something, right? Dual resident. Or I could just start by defining residence, right? Seems to be dual resident. And dual residence, I get it. Dual residence is dealt with, not so. Is dealt with under what? Under Article 4, paragraph what? Paragraph
1.
no, dual
Part
resident. 4.2 for individuals. I made you
Paragraph-
write all the paragraphs. I said paragraph 1 is definition of resident. Paragraph 2 is tiebreaker rule for individuals. And paragraph 3 is tiebreaker rule for entities, right? Don't ever forget this, because under international tax, you need it. It's dealt with under Article 4.2 using what? The tiebreaker rule. Are you getting it? You see how I answer questions? I want to make it practical for you. Using the tiebreaker rule for individuals, right? The tiebreaker rule, not so. The tiebreaker rule is as follows, right? Or if I like, I wouldn't have written this first. I would have gone in to insert my what? You remember my section 98. I get in section 98(1). Do you remember? Of the Revenue Administration Act, which says that where there's a conflict between what? The residents, I said the domestic law and what? And the DTA shall prevail over the domestic law. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And I told you that every question you answer, this thing to be inside, so far as Ghana is inside, because it could be that though we are looking at the concept of residence in the domestic law, I get it. Residence might have conflict with the DTA. You get it? So far as he's a Ghanaian. You see, it makes sense. Then the tiebreaker rule is as follows. Then we say that what? Permanent home, right? Permanent home. I get, or you, if you like, you can define, you can give us the whole tiebreaker rule, then you take it one by one. They say this is the first step, not so. The first step in defining what? In deciding the residence of what? Of the taxpayer or of seller, not so. Permanent home refers to what? Permanent home means a place what? Available to him what?
That's all times.
Available to him
That's all times.
At
all
all times.
Bring the word
Continuous.
For a
continuous,
Continuously.
right, or for a continuous period. Or not so, even if the place is rented, not so, then for a prolonged what?
Period.
Period. You see, now we're starting to
For
pan
a prolonged period.
for a prolonged period. It should not what? Be a short or temporary period, right? A short period. Something simple. Then I come and say from the case, I get it. If you like, just go systematic. It doesn't matter. So from the case, since I don't want to get confused, I can take Belgium. Nicely there. And I say, in the case of Belgium, you see how I'm answering the question? It should be smooth for you. I'm using what I can understand, right? In the case of Belgium, Selom has stayed, not so, over 10 years, not so, over 10 years with his family, not so,
Houses.
not so, signifying a what? A continuous what? A continuous availability, not so, and of a continuous availability of his domicile and a prolonged period or something like that. Therefore, Selom has a permanent home in Belgium, not so? Not so.
Yeah.
Then I
Yeah.
now take what? If I like, then I now go to what? Ghana. You see how I do it? It doesn't matter. If you like, you can put all in one paragraph, but I want to go this way. Then I come. Then I take Ghana. Then I say what? Since Selom has what? A room in his house, not so? Available to him, not so? Available to him at all times during the year when he visits Ghana, not so? When he visits Ghana, he has what? He has a permanent home in Ghana as well, right? And you see, therefore, or you can say, since Selom has what? Has permanent home, not so? in both states, not so. The first step proves what? Proves what?
Inconclusive.
Conclusive. You see how I made it simple? So if you think putting both into a paragraph may be confusing, simple. You see now, then you go to the next one. So you've talked about permanent home nicely. You see P. I started with a point, explanation, then evidence. The same way, you go to the next one, the point, then the explanation, evidence, point, explanation, evidence. Then you are gone. So you see, I always explain, then I give a conclusion. Then I explain, then I give what? A conclusion, like that. Is it making sense? Don't be scared. Don't be scared of any paper. I'll make sure you are well prepared for any paper. Even after all that, I will prepare you for the other papers as well. So don't worry. I get them. Give you all the exam techniques, all the nitty-gritties. You should be well fit for any question they throw at you. Is that okay? So don't worry. I hope you are learning something. So you see how I took it? If you like, you can use bullet points. It makes it work. It works. Okay, so that's fine. Did we learn something? So now that I've done the first one for you, let's see how you do the second one. So they are saying that we've dealt with permanent homes. The next test is, where does he have his center of vital interest? So when we start, we'll say that the second step is to determine his center of vital interest, which is the place where, what did you write? What is the definition? I told you, let's use P. So we've taken the point, which is center of vital interest. Let's go to explanation. That is, what is center of vital interest? Yes, I made you write it down. What did you write there? Center of vital interest, what did you write there? What did you write there?
So he be considered a resident of a country where his personal economic relations are closer.
Are closer. That is it. So that is what you see, right? So with center of vital interest, this refers to the place where his personal and economic relations are closer. Also, and this test is used if the permanent home proved inconclusive. Either he didn't have a permanent home in either of the states, or he had a permanent home in both states, right? And for Selom, he has a permanent home in both states. So this test is the next relevant one. So you can stay Belgium. Let's check. Belgium, does he have a permanent home in Belgium? A center of vital interest in Belgium?
Yes.
What are the clues? Lives with his family in Belgium, right? One.
No, that exists in Belgium. So
Selom's children, Belgium. Attend school, Belgium. Lived in Belgium for the past 10 years.
and
Owns several houses, also in Belgium.
Yeah.
Right? So, what is this telling us? These ones are all clues to tell us that Selom has what? Center of what? Of vital interest in Belgium. For example, we could see his family, his social life, and also his children's schools and all that. And even administration of his properties also in what? In Belgium. You see the way I'm giving the clues from the case, right? That's how I want you to go. So this alone is telling us that Selom has a what? A center of vital interest in Belgium. So you see, P, point, I've given explanation, then I came to give what? Evidence. True or false? True or false? Let's go to Ghana. Selom and his family, also, they said he grew up in, 1, 2, he's a national of Ghana, but he grew up in is where I'm concerned. If he grew up in Ghana, definitely has some sort of social life there, right? So social life in Ghana. And his family live in the houses in Belgium. And when Selom is traveling for his football engagement and other activities, he either stays at hotels or when in Ghana, when in Ghana, he can travel for football engagement and other activities, meaning he has some social and professional activities in Ghana. True or false?
True.
You can see, I use what the case is giving. And they said what? He stays at one of the houses and he has an arrangement with his brother, social life, right? Family. Center of vital interest. Not so. Not so. And he rents out other houses in Ghana. They said he owns several houses also in Ghana. Administration of his properties. Not so. And the other houses through an estate agency in Ghana. Using an estate agency, administration of your properties in Ghana. So what is this telling us? That means Selom also has center of vital interest where?
In Ghana.
And Belgium as well. So this test is also inconclusive. Because based on the points that we've been given in the scenario, Selom has his family, his business, and all that, his properties, his visas. By all means, you have visa in Ghana, you have visa in Belgium, right? You have social life in Ghana, social life in Belgium. He has his family here, family there. So this test proves inconclusive for Selom. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So since the test proved inconclusive, what is the next step? What is the next step?
Habitual
abode. Where does it stay most often, right? So you take it, you underline, then you start talking. What is habitual abode? Remember, we've done P, which is point. We need explanation. What is habitual abode? I made you write down something, right? Frequency, duration, and regularity of stays, right? That is part of a settled routine of the individual's life. This is what we want to see. And this one too is not something which is just for a short period or temporary period. It's something that he does often. We consider that, what name will we consider it? Habitual abode. So after you define this, then let's go through the scenario again. Where do we think Selom has his habitual abode? Where did he stay frequently? For a long time, and also regularly. Let's take Belgium. I like it that way. So let's take Belgium first. Belgium, let's look at the frequency.
He spent most of his time.
He spent most of his time in Belgium, right?
Belgium, yeah.
So for the past 10 years.
Call from Sisama.
For the past 10 years tells us that this guy has stayed in Belgium for a prolonged period. Is he understood? You can see that he spent most of his time in Belgium for a long time, right? And this tells us alone that it has been his habitual abode for some time. True or false?
True.
True. Now let's go to Ghana. He grew up in Ghana. Now, let's come here. What else can we deduce from the scenario that tells us he has habitual abode in Ghana? They said what? When he is traveling for his football engagement and other activities, he either stays at hotels or when he is in Ghana, he stays at one of his houses. And he has an arrangement with his brother to stay in the houses. Normally stays when he is Ghana. He's in Ghana. So he has a house where he stays often when he comes to Ghana throughout the year. So the house is available to him throughout the year. Not so? That means he often goes to Ghana and stays there throughout the year. Is this not an indication of a prolonged period? Is it not an indication of a prolonged period?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So what are we going to say? Does this test prove conclusive or inconclusive?
Inconclusive.
Inconclusive. So what's the next test?
Nationality.
Nationality. Nationality was obvious in the case, right? He's a national of Ghana. It was purely stated. So wait there. You get here, you say he's a national of Ghana. Since this is the key, what? Since this is the key requirement, or this is the test has proven what? Conclusive. So therefore, he will now be termed as a resident of what? Of Ghana, because the nationality criteria has been met. But you know something? Even with this, I'll go forward and say mutual agreement. Then I underline and say, if the above test of nationality proved to be inconclusive, then the tax authorities would have settled this by mutual agreement, and Selom's case will be dealt with under Article 25. You see how I answer questions? So I exhaust all the steps. No matter where I end, I still exhaust all the steps. I hope you are learning exam technique. Was this question a good one? Was the question a good one? This question is the same question they keep reframing and reframing and reframing. And it's the same question that you are going to get this time. Even if you pray, Christ, still this question will still come. If you don't pray, it will still come. So pray. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? That means everyone is okay. Okay, so now let's look at dual residence for entities. But you know, for Selom's question, if I like, I could continue and say that, okay, since Selom is resident in Ghana, in accordance with section 101, subsection 1, an individual is said to be resident in Ghana where 1, he's a citizen of Ghana, other than a citizen who has a permanent home outside the country and stayed there for more than 365 days, right? 2, somebody who has stayed more than 183 days in Ghana for an aggregate period of 183 days. 3, a government official posted abroad. And 4, also, a citizen who is temporarily outside the country and has stayed there for less than 365 days, but has a permanent home in Ghana. So if I look at this, then I say, considering Selom's case, Selom is a citizen of Ghana who actually stayed less than a whole year in Belgium, and therefore qualifies as residents under Act 896. I say examiner no what blocking no. It's like you have finished this one, you are adding this one too. Yes, it tells the person you really understand the law. And there's no way. If it's 20, you get 20 over 20. This guy will not think twice than to give you 20 exactly. That's how come some of my guys are able to take award. This is the approach you use to answer questions. Yes. Always answering questions the way you are required to answer. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is we've been able to learn how to determine dual residence or solve dual residence cases, right? With regards to individuals. What if the dual resident case was with regard to an entity? Then how would we then deal with it? Now, paragraph 3 of both the OECD and the UN models concern companies and other bodies of persons other than individuals, right? So individuals, we've looked at it. Now we are looking at other bodies of persons or entities. The situation of dual residence may arise in the case of companies and other non-corporate bodies where one contracting state attaches importance to the place of incorporation and the other attaches importance to the state of effective management. If that is the case, what do we do? Now, before 2017, the tiebreaker rule that we use for resolving double taxation issues was the place of effective management, right? Even now, the DTAs that we have with Ghana has with other countries, it has always been the place of effective management and still is. We have not amended the DTA. So if you use this to answer questions, they will still give you. But because we are going with current issues, as at 2017, we do not use the sole tiebreaker rule, which was the place of effective management. Now, the tax authorities use mutual agreement to determine residence of companies, right? which is a case-by-case approach. So they look at your case and decide which one is better for determining your residence. But before we do that, in that mutual agreement procedure that the tax authorities will use, they test some factors, okay? So where a person, other than an individual, is a resident of both contracting states, the competent authorities, which is the tax authorities of the contracting states, shall endeavor to determine by mutual agreement the contracting state of which such person shall be deemed to be resident for the convention, having regard to its place of effective management, the place where it is incorporated, or other relevant factors. Is that okay? So before you can determine residence for a particular company or entity, mostly they are going to bring companies. It could be a trust, could be a company, could be a charity or an exempt entity. We use the same approach. Is that okay? So always open your eyes when such cases are given to you. Now, place of effective management. When we say place of effective management, that's the first test, which is very important. However, when you are determining place of effective management, you still need to consider all these factors anyway. So whichever way you go, it will be given. By using this one makes it more professional, meaning you are current. They will still mark it for you. It doesn't matter which one you go for. Now, when we talk about your place of effective management, this is where the actual decision that affects the commercial decision of the company in substance is taken. So let's say if you sell shoes, where is the major place you sell the shoes or manufacture the shoes, right? The place where all these commercial decisions are actually taken is the place of effective management. So here, the key issue is the decisions that affect the company and where these decisions are taken. That is what we are looking for. Is that okay? So if you are running a plant, where do you actually run the plant? That's your place of effective management. Where your major operating decision is taken, your place of effective management, you are managing the business from there. Then the next thing you look at in that case-by-case basis is to look at the legal birthplace of the company, where it is incorporated. So if it was incorporated under the laws of Ghana, you look at it there, right? So you consider all these points for both countries, then you look at which one is conclusive and which one seems inconclusive. But apart from that, you have to test other relevant factors. Are you getting it? So we take into consideration other factors before finally deciding on which country has more points against the other to decide which country this company is resident. So we look at where the board of directors do their meetings, where the CEO and other executives carry on their activities, where the senior day-to-day management of the company is carried on, where their head office is located, which country's laws govern the legal status of the person, where the accounting records are kept. We look at all those things, right? And the state which has majority of them, or where the place of effective management and the legal place take hold, and other factors go inside, that is where we decide, right? But the thing is that if we look at all these factors, and at the end of the day, it still proves inconclusive, then we do not settle by mutual agreement, because it was mutual agreement that we were doing already. If it's inconclusive, then I'm sorry, we cannot deal with your case. You lose every benefit under the DTA. Meaning in effect, the DTA will not apply to you because we couldn't determine where you were resident, so we cannot solve. You get the idea? So for companies, that's the only disadvantage. In the absence of such agreement, such person shall not be entitled to any relief or exemption from tax provided by this convention, except to the extent and in such manner as may be agreed upon by the competent authorities of the contracting states. As stated above, the last sentence of paragraph 3 provides that in the absence of a determination by the competent authorities, the non-resident person shall not be entitled to any relief or exemption under the convention, except to the extent and in such a manner as may be agreed by the competent authorities. So, yes, case-by-case basis. And what are the 3 things to consider in the mutual agreement procedure? Who can remember? What are the 3 things to consider in the mutual agreement procedure for entities?
The place of effective management.
I'm listening.
Then a place where the entity is incorporated.
Place of incorporation.
And any other factors to be taken into account under the mutual agreement procedure.
And what are some of those factors?
Okay, where the board meets, where the CEO office is, where the headquarters is located, where the accounting records are kept.
Okay. Nice. So you can consider all these things. So let's take a question. Mansi Limited, incorporated in A and listed on the stock exchange in country B. The board chairman of the company actually owns a substantial minority shares and lives in country B with 3 other directors. The company has a manufacturing plant in country A, and the management decisions for operating the plant are made by 2 directors who are also resident in country A, who meet weekly. They, however, consult the other directors in country B on matters of exceptional importance. The board of directors meets once in a quarter at the company's office in country B. The chairman and 2 other directors attend the board meetings in person, and 1 director remains at the plant in country A and participates by telephone. Country A treats a company as residence if it is incorporated in country A, and country B treats a company as tax resident if its central management and control are exercised in country B. Under country B's laws, Munse Limited is regarded as what? Resident in country B. And the tax treaty between country A and country B is the same as the OECD Model Tax Convention. Required, in accordance with the OECD Model Convention on Income and Capital, advise Mansi Limited, the country in which it is tax resident or it is resident for tax purposes, and give reasons for your advice. So I am going to start by telling us that, yes, this is an issue of dual residence, right? When it comes to dual residence, for what? For entities, before 2017, would have been using the sole tiebreaker rule, which was what? The place of effective management. But during and after 2017, the tax authorities decided to go by a case-by-case approach where we use mutual agreement procedure. And for this mutual agreement procedure, 3 main issues or 3 main factors are to be considered. 1, then I talk about what? Place of effective management. 2, place of incorporation. And 3, other relevant factors. So I take place of what? Effective management. Now that question comes to you. Somebody will say, I put it to you. Where is the place of effective management of Mansi Limited? Yes, the question is for you guys. Where is the place of effective management? Yes, where is the place of effective management? We have all learned today, so everybody has the chance to talk. Where is the place of effective management? Based on what we learned. Read again. The case is in front of you. Read and tell me where the place of effective management is.
Okay, so the management decisions for operating the plants are made by 2 directors resident in country A, who meets weekly. We are listening.
Who meets weekly? Please, I'm listening. No? Is that all? Is that the evidence for the place of effective management? No, I mean, is that the answer you want to give?
Yes, A.
Yes, so you must give me a conclusion that, therefore, which country has the place of effective management? Therefore, which country has the place of effective management?
Country A.
Country A. So you say it. That is it, right? Then you go to what? Country B. What things are evident there? I told you take it A, B. A, B, you cannot see any evidence of operations there, right? All they do is meet. There's nothing of operation in there. So you cannot deem what do we call it? Place of effective management to be in country B. Now let's go to place of incorporation. It was obvious. Mansi Limited was incorporated in country A. Meboa. It was straightforward. That's all. So that means it is governed by the laws of country A. Okay. So far, country A has 2 points under the mutual agreement. Let's go to the other relevant factors. Where do they have their head office? Where's the company's head office? Indication, country B. They've told us, right? Where do directors meet? Directors meet once a quarter in country what? Country B, not so?
B.
Okay, the other directors, the chairman and
Yeah.
directors attend the board meeting in person because they are all in country B, nice. But one director remains in country A who participates by telephone. This alone has given country A another point. That means the meetings to some extent have a inside, right? If he's not participating, there was a different issue. But we had somebody from A participating still. True or false?
True.
True. And country A itself treats a company as resident when it is incorporated in A. And country B treats what? A company if a central management and control are exercised in country B. However, the central management and control, based on the factors we looked at, were not so strong compared to the one we had from country A, right? So far, country A has 3 points. Wajene 3 points. But country B only has 1 point, right? So which one has won?
Country A.
Country A, right? Based on the factors that we are given, it seems country A should be the best place to be a tax resident for country for Mansi Limited. Not so. In case where all the tests proved inconclusive, the Mansi Limited will lose all the benefits under the treaty. That's how you conclude. Is this thing difficult? And it's 15 marks, just like that. Yes. Did you get it? So look at how I approached it. There's a different scenario. So you see how I started. I started that under Article 4 of the Model Tax Convention, a person who under the laws of a jurisdiction is liable by reason of residence or place of management is regarded as resident in that jurisdiction for tax purposes. However, where a company is a resident of 2 contracting states, the tiebreaker rule shall apply. Prior to 2017, the sole tiebreaker rule for resolving double taxation issues for entities was the place of effective management. In 2017, the Committee of Fiscal Affairs recommended a change to a case-by-case approach, considering the number of tax avoidance cases involving dual residents, right? Determination under the case-by-case approach will be requested by the concerned taxpayer through mutual agreement procedure. Simple, right? This alone tells the examiner that, wow, the person writing is not a small person, right? So the competent authority shall endeavor to determine by mutual agreement procedure, also the contracting state of which such person shall be deemed to be a resident for the purpose of the convention, having regard to its place of effective management, the place where it is incorporated, or other relevant factors. So you see, I talked about all the 3. Then I take it one by one. Place of incorporation. Then you see P. I always use P in every answer. If you look at answers which are crafted by me, you see I make it simple, straight to the point. I use headings. It makes sense. Always adopt this approach and you won't struggle. Me, I never struggle with any exam because I sit down and learn approach to answer questions. That's always the trick. So you see, I take place of incorporation. Then I explain. P, point, explanation, right? So look, I'm always showing you things so that you follow. So P, point. This is point. I hope you are learning.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are.
Then I said what? This refers to the birthplace. What am I doing? This is point. What's the next step? What am I doing? Oh, I gave you P. You are not making me happy. I gave you P. You know the meaning of P. I said this is point. And I said this refers to the birthplace of the company. What is this? No.
That is the explanation.
Explanation. Yes, I want you to flow with me. Explanation. So you see, after I put the points down, this refers to the birthplace of the company and which country's laws that governs Mansell Limited. Then you see, I came here, I said from the foregoing, Mansell Limited is incorporated in country A and therefore is governed by country A's laws. What is this?
Evidence.
Evidence. This is what I want. So you see, every time I answer questions, you see that I always do this, right? So you give the point, you explain it, you give evidence from the case. You see, everything can be broken into a systematic module. So you see, I went for it to say this is inconclusive to determine the residence since other factors should also be considered. You see how I answer questions? Simple language, I won't go and complicate issues. Simple language, but I'll give you the key points that you need. This is what you have to learn how to do if you want to be successful in any paper. Is that okay? It doesn't only apply to international taxation, but any other paper you are doing in any exam works like magic, right? The English language itself, you need to learn the ins and outs of it. Especially, there's some sort of copywriting. We call it highlights and headlines, right? To persuade the examiner to mark your answer, right? It's a psychological game, actually. So let's continue. So you see, that is how I took it. Then I came to place of effective management. You see, I gave the point, then I gave the explanation, right? So this refers to where the actual decision that affects the financial and commercial activities in substance for the company is taken as a whole. I get it. Then here, the issue is the decisions that affect the company and where the decisions are taken. So I said from the foregoing, Mansell Limited will therefore have its effective place of effective management in country A, since the key decisions for operating the plant are taken in country A. Makes sense? Does that make sense? Then I go forward.
Yeah.
Other factors to be considered. The commentary to Article 4 provides the following factors should be taken into account during the mutual agreement proceedings. 1, where the board of directors usually meets. In this case, the board meetings are held in country B and attended by all the directors except one who stays in country A and participates by telephone. The evidence here is also not conclusive because we cannot decide because both of them, the two countries still, one attends by meeting. Also, where the senior executives usually carry on their activities and where the day-to-day senior management of the company is carried on. The company's business activity, which is manufacturing, is carried on in country A, where the two directors live, right? These two directors make the management decisions for operating the manufacturing plant and consult other directors on matters of exceptional importance. This conclusively indicated that this condition is fulfilled for country A. Are you getting it? So you give a conclusion that all the factors in the mutual agreement was in favor of country A, and thus the company should be deemed resident in country A for tax purposes. Is that okay? Any questions so far? So I hope we all have a good understanding of residence. Do we?
Yeah. Yes.
So we are going to continue to the next part of residence. I want you to take some 5 minutes break and come back. I'm having a staff nose. Let me go and come. Is that okay? So I'll see you in about 5 to 10 minutes time. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay. So that was about residence. But the thing is, there are some other methods that we use to determine residence, okay? And that is what you need to also know. Are you getting? So we'll look at the other methods to determine residence, and we'll look at residence in the Ghanaian tax law, and then we call it a day. Is that okay? So there are some other tests apart from the tiebreaker rule that we used and the residence that we learned, right? These are unorthodox ways, or there are some ways that we determine residence, right? Whether DTA or no DTA, right? There are other things that the tax authorities do consider. So we have the facts and circumstances test. Actually, you know, before the DTAs were crafted, they thought about all these tests, I get it, and finally used it to craft the tiebreaker rule. So with the facts and circumstances test, the tax authorities decide based on largely objective facts. So whether an individual's economic and social connections within the particular country justifying their taxing, I get it, as a resident. And the most significant manifestation of an individual's connection to a country is probably the maintenance of a dwelling that is available for use by the individual and his family. Okay. You see this one, we saw it in the tiebreaker rule as what? Center of vital interest and also the permanent home thing. So factors that we use to determine residence here include the location of your family, your social ties like your bank account, club membership, driver's license, your visa and immigration status, your actual presence in the country. Okay, so these are the factors. Based on the facts and circumstances in the case, we can use this facts and circumstances test. Okay, then there are some other factors that you consider. Are you getting it? Apart from these ones, the normal ones we looked at under personal and economic relations being closer, center of vital interest can still be considered. Your social life and all that, right? The administration of your properties. But then the thing is that this thing has a weakness. This facts and circumstances test has a weakness. Unless this one is buttressed by simple presumptions, the facts and circumstances test is unsatisfactory because it is effectively difficult to apply, because how can we check all these things for the individuals? Some individuals, you will not even see them to be able to determine the location of their ties and all that, right? So it makes it difficult to apply this test. Then we have the common type, which is the arbitrary test, where you see somebody is tied to the number of days of physical presence in a particular country. So usually 183 days or more. Okay, that's a common type that we use. If you stay 183 days in aggregate or continuously in a particular country, depending on the rules, right? Such a test may be used as a supplement to the facts and circumstances test that we looked at, right? But the problem of the arbitrary test is that unless you exercise strict control of over your border and your airports to know who comes in and who goes out, it will be difficult to tell whether Daniel has stayed 183 days in Ghana. True or false? True or false? True or false? Can you easily tell how many days somebody has stayed in Ghana? Or it's difficult? Is it true or is false? So this is the problem with this arbitrary test. It's difficult because in Ghana, you cannot tell if somebody comes from the US right now, unless you know him, right? That's the problem. You get it? Individuals who are living and entering the country, we are supposed to exercise strict control over those people, but it's not done in Ghana. So it's difficult, right? To apply this 183 days. So those who can catch, it will catch. Those who can't catch too, they will be left alone. So we have some special rules for residents. So special rules may be necessary for certain individuals. For example, it may be appropriate to deem diplomats, military personnel, and other government employees to be residents of the country that employs them, despite the fact that these individuals might not be residents on the basis of facts and circumstances test, because they spend most of their time outside the country. Okay, some countries also provide special rules for temporary residents, residents for a part of the year, exit and departure taxes. Now, the thing is that even Ghana, we capture some of these special rules. When you read section 101, subsection 3, section 101, subsection 1, C, are you getting it? It talks about the officials of government posted abroad during the year. So if you are official of government of Ghana and you are posted abroad during the year, it's a special rule of residence. You are no resident. So these are the various ways of determining residence. Now, when you come to residence in Ghana, it's either you're a resident individual or a resident entity. Okay, so a resident individual is a resident in the country for a year of assessment. Remember, I told you the last time that resident is determined. Residence is determined yearly. Every year we assess you for residence. So if you're a citizen of Ghana, other than a citizen who has a permanent home outside Ghana and lives in that home for the whole year. So if you are using Selom's case, so far as Selom lived, let's say 2022, Selom lived in Belgium for the whole year, then that year Selom will not be a resident in Ghana. How? Because Selom, though he's a national or citizen of Ghana, he had a permanent home outside Ghana and lived in that permanent home for the whole of that year. Does that make sense? Then that is it. So even if if you are a Ghanaian resident and you stay in Ghana for only 1 day and you stayed in Belgium for 364 days, you are still resident in Ghana, because so far as you didn't stay there for the whole of that year, you are still resident in Ghana. That's the rule for individuals you need to understand, and you should be able to apply it to questions. 2, if you are a non-resident and you are present in Ghana during the year for an aggregate period, it's not continuous. Before it was continuous. Now it says aggregate, meaning say, even if you leave and you come back and we add all the periods for which you stayed in Ghana, right? And it is more than 183 days, or it is up to 183 days or more in any 12-month period that commences or ends during that year. When we say 12-month period commences or ends during that year, an individual who is a resident individual by stay of 183 days or more for a year of assessment, are you getting it? Mostly it is referred to as the current year of assessment. But who was not a resident individual for the earlier year of assessment is treated as resident in the current year of assessment. So that's how we determine the 12-month period. Okay. Only for a period commencing on the date that the individual was first present in Ghana. So we look at it. Okay. So based on what we are determining, were you resident for the previous year? If you were, then this year is where we are determining your residence. If last year you weren't resident, then we'll look at the 12-month period that ended that year and capture you as resident in that period. If that 183-day pans out in that year, that's how we do it. It's very simple. Are you getting it? So for instance, if in the current year of assessment, you are a resident for the following year, you are a resident for this year, but you are not resident for the following year of assessment, we treat as residents in this year. Ending on the last day in which you were present in Ghana, we map it back and count the number of period or the number of days you have stayed, whether it is more than 183 days or up to 183 days. Are we okay? If you're an official or employee of government and you are posted abroad outside Ghana, you are resident, still resident. And if you are a citizen of Ghana, right, you have a permanent home in Ghana, but you didn't stay outside, I get it, though you are temporarily outside, you didn't stay outside for more than 365 days, right? It's the opposite of the first one. Then you are still resident. So if you're a Ghanaian, so far as you don't stay outside for more than 365 days in a year, the whole year, you are still resident in Ghana. That's the rule you need to understand. That makes resident simple, right? Now that's about resident individual. When we come to resident partnership, for the purpose of this act, a partnership is a resident in Ghana for a year of assessment if any of the partners were residents, okay, that resided there were resident in Ghana at any time during the year. Because in Ghana, we still adopt the fiscal transparency rule. So if you are dealing with partnerships, are you getting in Ghana? If you are dealing with partnerships, we consider the individual partners and not the partnership itself. So if any of the partners in that partnership was resident, meaning he met the criteria under residence as above, then we deem that partnership as a resident partnership. Okay, so because we deal with the individuals in the partnership and not the partnership business itself. So if any of the partners for a year of assessment resided in Ghana at any time during that year, then we deem it as a resident partnership. Let's go to a resident trust. A trust will be resident in Ghana if the trust is 1, established in Ghana, or 2, a trustee of the trust is resident in Ghana at any time during that year, or a person who is resident in the country directs or may direct the senior managerial decisions. So when we talk about senior managerial decisions, we are mostly talking about operation of your plant, your manufacturing process, the business or deal itself. Now, if somebody who is a Ghanaian or a resident of Ghana is the one directing the operations of the trust, whether he is doing it alone or together with other people or through other persons, then that trust shall be deemed as resident. But when it comes to resident companies, it's to either incorporation, the company was incorporated under the Companies Act, or the management and control of the affairs of that company are exercised in Ghana at any time during the year. That is what we call place of effective management. So, though this one was shallow, it still meets the place of effective management criteria. So when you are looking at residence in questions, if Ghana is involved, make sure you still talk about residence under the Ghanaian tax law. It gives you extra points. Are we okay? So that is it. That's about residence. So finally, we have change in residence. Change in residence usually has to do with, what do we call it? Realization, right? Selling of assets. When you leave a country and you have assets you're administering and all that, right? But that is not one thing we are mostly concerned about. But in this juncture, we can still go over it. Now, a person who is resident in the country, that is Ghana, during a year of assessment, is deemed to be resident for the whole of that year. That's once you're a resident, we assume you are a resident for the whole of that year. And therefore, any income which is derived from Ghana, accrued in Ghana, brought into Ghana, or received in Ghana will all be taxed during the period. However, if you were not resident, only income that was accrued or derived that has a source in Ghana, that will be taxed in Ghana. So despite the above, the individual who is resident in the country by reason of the period present in Ghana is resident from the start of the 183-day period. That is what we actually do. So we use that as a counter. Where a non-resident person becomes resident in Ghana, the net cost of any asset that is held by that person immediately before he became resident is equal to the market value of the asset at the time the person became resident. So it is a condition for realization that anytime you have an asset, the net cost of the asset immediately before you became resident will be equal to the market value of the asset as at that time you became resident. And this does not apply to an asset which is a domestic asset of that person immediately before becoming a resident. And it applies to any foreign asset that person owned. Okay, that is the assumption. So where a person resident in the country ceases to be resident, an asset owned by that person immediately before he became non-resident is considered as realized. Realization can mean sale, exchange, disposal, right? So it means that you have disposed of your assets at the date you became non-resident. And here the consideration for the asset shall amount to the market value of the asset at the time of realization. So if you bought the asset at 220, and that's at the time you became non-resident in Ghana, during that period, you became non-resident, then during that period, what will happen is that your assets will be revalued at the market value in the market. So you bought it for 220, but as at the time you became non-resident, the asset value was worth 300. That means you've made a realization gain of about 80 on the asset, and therefore it is subject to tax. That is the rule. Okay, so it doesn't apply to assets that you own here, right? That are your domestic assets. Are we okay? So it applies to foreign assets that you own, either within or without. Okay, so that brings us to the end of residence. Very important provision that you need to understand.